Welcome. Long time no talk, no see.
I want to play a little game with you.
Okay. Not that one that Uncle Kevin.
Cousin Kevin, you mean? Knuckle Ernie? No, not that kind of game.
Good.
This game is called Together or Not Together.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm going to call it. The gist of it is I name the band and you guess whether or not they're still performing, putting out music, still together as that entity. And the rules are basically it has to be a band that I know there's a good chance you're familiar with, if not overly familiar with. Um, and for them to still be considered active, they have to still be touring or putting out music or have done so within the last few years, and they still have the right to use the name, that sort of thing. So other than that, that's pretty much it. And it's so when I name the band, you make your guess, but give it a little thought. It's not just like, we're going to go through 20 of these really quickly and you're going to go yes or no, yes or no. So, make sense?
Yep.
Okay, it's kind of historical in the sense that I think this is the first quiz show we've had on Track Records podcast.
And as I hinted at last time, I actually have one as well. And so we do
Okay.
yours and we do mine.
Okay, and this is probably my list is pretty lengthy, so this is going to take a few episodes at least.
And
So
maybe we
what?
sprinkle them in.
Sure, we could do however it works. With that being said, the first band is the Soft Boys, who uh, they're the English band, post-punk band that started in the late '70s, early '80s, that Robin Hitchcock founded and was the main songwriter, singer for the band. And then, of course, he went on to do lots of great solo work under his own name and under Robin Hitchcock and the Egyptians. So, are they still together? Are they still active, Ken?
Let me please note that that explanation of who the band was for all you listeners out there, because I'm a big Soft Boys fan, so I don't need any sort of backstory on the Soft Boys. As a matter of fact, the other main member of the band was Kimberly Rue, and he went off to help form Katrina and the Waves
Exactly.
on Sunshine. So, and
Very good.
the
I
song.
should know better than to preface it with any sort of background,
No, no,
but
no. It's good.
it
It's
is
good
for
for the
our viewer.
listeners. Yes, for all our viewer, it's good. And the Soft Boys, my favorite album by the Soft Boys is one that's out of print, and it's hard to get. It's called Live at the Portland Arms, and it's excellent. But I'm a big Soft Boys fan, so I would say considering Robin Hitchcock is doing his own thing, and I certainly haven't heard anything of them touring or doing anything, I would say not together.
Ding, 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 ding. You are correct.
Okay.
They got back to after they broke up. I think it was in the late '80s. They actually only put out two solo records, or I'm sorry, two studio records,
Yeah,
Underwater Moonlight
Moonlight.
and A
Yeah.
Can of Bees,
Yep.
which are records that I really like a lot. They're classics of that era, I think.
And do you know the
Um,
Portland Arms record?
I do not. I wasn't
Yeah.
even aware of it.
Yeah, so you should get that.
Um, And then when they broke up, I think it must have been the mid to late '80s,
Yeah.
so pretty early on. They weren't together forever. They got back together in the early 2000s and put out a record in 2003 and did some touring. And it was with I believe three of the four original guys. And I have that record as well, and that's quite good as well. But after that, they have not gotten back together again, and Robin Hitchcock has just been doing his thing. So
And he's quite prolific. He puts out a lot of albums.
he
So
does, and I got to say, I have one of the recent ones. I think it's just self-titled. I think it's just called Robin Hitchcock, and it's as good as anything as he's done. It's shocking to me when an artist like him, and in fact, this is going to be a topic for a future show. An artist like him can continue to put out new music of such a high level, that actually compares favorably to a lot of their older stuff from 40 years ago at this point, if not 50 years ago.
It,
So it's
it's
impressive.
it's crazy. The one album of his though that I would really recommend, solo album, is I Often Dream of Trains.
Yeah, I
That
have it.
stands out as particularly a great album. So,
Yeah, agreed. I like it very much. Next one, and this is switching gears a little bit. Um, the Canadian rockers, the Guess who of course
I
got
would
together originally in the mid 60s in Canada,
66,
Winnipeg,
67, yeah.
Winnipeg, Manitoba's finest. Um, Randy Bachman, who of later of Bachman Turner Overdrive, he was one of the founding members, along with oh, what the fuck's the singer's name? Burton Cummings, who, for my money, has one of the top five rock and roll voices of all time. I just absolutely love the way that guy sings, and in particular on those old Guess Who songs. He just, to me, he epitomizes what a rock voice should sound like. So fucking good. But anyway, together or not?
Together.
Wow. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, you're good. You're very good. So yeah, after a pretty long period of dormancy, they did get back together with a lot of the original guys. Not Rand, well, they did a few reunion shows here and there with Randy Bachman, but mainly with Jim Cale, who was the bassist, and Gary Peterson, the drummer, and Burton Cummings sporadically, but for a long time it was just Gary Peterson and I believe Jim Cale. And then now it's finally down to just the drummer, Gary Peterson, who put together a completely new lineup for a 2023 studio album and tour. So yes, they are active to this day.
As you will soon be doing with the Ambitions with two of your next door neighbors.
Oh, fuck you. Mm. Okay, next up. So
Yeah.
you're two for two so far.
All right.
That's mighty impressive, my friend. Uh, Post-punk legends and oh God, I can't remember where in England they're from. Is it Oxford or maybe it's anyway, Gang of Four.
Together, as far as I know, because they still are playing the occasional show, I believe. Uh, Now it's been a little while, but I believe they are still together.
Final answer is to get
Together.
okay. So very close. So Andy Gill, who was one of the co-founders and really the driving force behind that band, in my opinion, he was their guitarist
Yeah.
and primary songwriter. He died, I think it was around 2017, maybe
Because they were
16.
still playing up until that point.
They still were,
Yeah.
and after he died, they continued on without him.
Yeah. John King, the lead singer.
Yes, the front man
Yeah.
singer.
Was Dave Allen still on bass?
He was not. It was their second bass player
Sarah
who,
Lee.
yes, exactly. So
I saw him
it
with
was,
both. So
yeah. It was, and also with the original drummer
Hugo Burnham.
Burnham.
Yeah.
So they were playing, and they had some guy filling in for Andy Gill.
Yeah.
They were playing off and on up until last year,
Okay,
and
that's what I
finally,
was saying. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the reason I say you're close is they had formal farewell shows this year, and now supposedly,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I think we heard the Who say this
yes.
starting in about 1979.
Yes.
They formally are no longer active as of this year, like just within the last few months.
Okay. So that one's a little dodgy because again, as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty close to active.
Pretty close, but I'm a real stickler here. I
We'll
don't.
see. This might be revisited 6 months from now. Uh,
Okay.
Quick note:
Uh,
when they did a reunion show in 2004 in Boston, Hugo Burnham was actually teaching like high school in Brookline, which is where I grew up, and he posted on I forget where Facebook or whatever. I don't remember what was
Let
the
me guess, your buddy gave him a ride to the show.
well, no, he wanted to ride to the show.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and I wanted to try to like be the one, and I what like I someone aced me out. You know,
Yeah.
so
He did not want to ride in your 1982 Datsun
exactly.
B210.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon. So
I saw them on that tour, and I know we've talked about this
yeah,
already, but
they were great that tour. So
they sure were. It was the original four, and it was like going back to 1981 and seeing them tour on the Solid Gold record, and they just sounded so excellent.
and the first time I saw them was '82 in Brixton, when Howard, my college roommate, and I were in London for the summer. Saw the Clash in Brixton and saw Gang of Four in Brixton, and that to see them there was incredible. So
Yeah, that's a couple notches on your belt there. Seeing the Clash and Gang of Four in '82 in England in Brixton,
yeah, and so
pretty cool.
and it was a little unnerving, but it was great. I love the Gang of Four, in particular their first album, then the Solid Gold, which is an EP.
No,
Um,
Solid Gold's a full record.
which one's the EP?
I think it's just called Gang of Four. It's the yellow one with the
Yeah,
silver, right? Yeah, with like
that's what we just said.
four
Solid Gold. I was
songs.
thinking of that because that's
Yeah.
outside the trains don't run on time.
Yes, which ended up showing up on Solid Gold as well.
Okay.
But that EP, I believe, came out between Entertainment and Solid
Yeah.
Gold,
Yeah.
and really, and really excellent as well.
No, that EP was fantastic. I believe Armalette Rifle was on there too,
Yes, it is.
which is just such a great song. And so that first album, the EP, Solid Gold, all fantastic stuff. And then I felt they started to slide. I lost some interest in them. But
Was that with the Songs of the Free record?
yeah,
That
that's very
yeah,
one. So
which I don't think you were alone in losing interest in them because that was more of almost like it had disco trappings to it, and like it was really dance oriented compared to as their previous two records, and I think they lost a lot of their fan base then. But artistically, I kind of like it when bands just try something new
yeah,
because maybe they're getting bored and they don't want to keep repeating the same successful format that they've been using. So,
and
in hindsight, I respect it. Back then in the day, like you, I was like, oh, what the fuck is this?
although I will say the one track that had somewhat of a disco feel that I really liked.
I love a man in a
Yeah,
uniform.
that is a great song. So
It is,
yeah,
yeah. And you listen to that record now, and it's damn good,
yeah.
in my opinion. Um, all right, moving on. Another band from really from the same era, different country, but same era, The Church.
I remember their hit song "Unguarded Moment." Well, hit like minor hit song.
Well,
Um,
that was their really
there's
what got them on the map because
yeah,
that was from their very first record, which I
yeah,
believe is 1979. That's how far back they go.
because
But of course, what really put them on the map in this country was a big top 40 MTV hit was Under the Milky Way from
yeah,
the
for me,
Starfish record.
I so preferred like that song's okay as far as I'm concerned, but "Unguarded Moment" was a classic. I love that song.
You know who produced that first record of theirs?
No, and I didn't realize it was '79. I thought it was a little later.
Yeah, yeah. And it was out in Australia in '79.
Okay,
I
I think
think it
it came
came
out
out a
later.
year or so later in the
Yeah.
States. And anyway, Steve Lillywhite, who produced all
Okay,
those great
that makes
records
sense.
from
Yeah,
that era,
yeah.
produced that record.
I
Um,
really like all those bands from that time. That's that British romantic new wave period.
uh-huh.
Teardrop explodes, that sort of stuff. Um, but I'll say together.
You are correct. So they're kind of interesting in that they never stopped putting out records. They have consistently put out records. Oh, one every 2 to 3 years since their heyday. Their heyday, I would say, being that late 80s, early 90s when they had commercial success in the States and they were playing big places. I saw them at the Fillmore in San Francisco on that Starfish tour. Um, so they are still together. And like I said, they've still been putting out records. And another example of a band that somewhat blows my mind because of the quality of their records. It's still so good. They put out a double LP in 23 and then a like sister record, another double in 2024 that are for my money as good as almost any of their other records. And the mind-boggling thing is that only Stephen he's the only original member left in the band. He was the bass player, primary songwriter, primary singer for their entire run. And it's so weird with completely different musicians. They sound so much like the Church still, and
So
they're just fantastic records.
I have a question that you would know much better than me. That that they could put out two double albums in a row. Do those albums sell, or is it just much easier to record and release music these days?
Um, I can't imagine. I mean, it's all relative, I guess. Do they sell? So, do they sell compared to what a record would sell? How many hit record would sell in 1988? No, absolutely not. But I think I, I can imagine they would sell maybe 10,000 copies of the physical record. Would be my guess for a band like them.
And back in
And
the '80s, that would get you dropped.
oh God, yes.
And so
500,000 would get you
yeah,
dropped for
yeah.
some
So,
bands.
that's why it's a whole different world we live in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And the only reason they're even being pressed on record or on vinyl at this point is because there's enough of a little niche market that people like myself and will still buy the record, but the numbers are so few, and that's not how a band makes most of their money. In fact, they don't make most bands don't make any money on their records. It's doing live shows, and
Yeah.
the church still tours. Like it seems like they're in the States every couple years, if not more. Um, and yeah, just another example of they keep plugging away and keep putting out great music.
But
But
but they wouldn't have been able to do that under the old
the old model,
hierarchy. Yeah.
well, it's hard to say because under that old model, people still would have been buying records, and you know, all the big labels would still be around promoting and pushing a new big record and a new tour, and there was so much more money involved in the machinery than the corporate machinery
Yep.
that I think they would have sustained. But now
As
it's
long as
just
there
more of
was
a
as long as there was corporate muscle behind them. Yeah.
yeah, and now if these bands like the Church, if they do sustain for decades, it's more of I'm assuming more of a homegrown grassroots
Right.
effort. They're on tiny labels. Like I don't even know the label. They've probably been on numerous labels over the last 25 years, little indies out of Australia or whatever.
Right.
But their records are promoted enough to get on the radar of someone like myself. And one of my friend Dob in particular, this is one of his favorite bands. So he alerts me to or talks about their newer records when they come out. And that's kind of how they get on my radar, and then I'll go check them out.
So not Dom, not Pat, but ask. I'm curious. Ask like the next time you're I don't know playing ping pong or whatever. Ask that person when the last time they bought a record or CD was. I,
Okay.
I'm going to guess it was at least over 10 years ago and more like 20.
Yeah. Um, as you
You
know,
don't count, and Dom doesn't count, and Pat doesn't count.
right. Well, most of my friends are music heads
Yeah,
and
so they don't
and
count.
well, and still buying records.
Yeah.
But if I just ask some random person, yeah, it's the last time they bought a record, I would guess would be 1988.
Like a physical record or
Yeah,
CD,
yeah, yeah. Um,
as opposed to like streaming.
hmm Yeah, it's going to be few when you're talking mainstream folks who
Yeah.
where music isn't like a big part of their life.
I even think, even look at me.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, but you're much more of a music fanatic slash aficionado than the
and
mainstream person
right,
we're
that's my
talking
point. And
about.
I don't buy CDs. I don't buy
Yeah,
albums.
yeah,
Uh,
right, right.
I think the last time I bought an album was definitely over 10 years ago. You know,
Uh-huh.
in a CD probably 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, I
hmm
just don't. And I'll be curious to see if music changes in terms of like I don't think you'll ever see another unless it's like some indie small thing, but another Sergeant Pepper's, another Tommy, because I think so many people now listen to songs as opposed to albums. And I don't think people release concept albums. I think.
Well, I beg to differ, and we'll
Okay.
get to that.
Okay.
Just based on some of the people on this list,
Okay.
or some of the bands on this list. No, bands are still doing that. It's just
But I
it,
think
it
people listen to songs more than they listen to albums
oh, for
because
sure,
of
for
streaming.
sure.
You know.
Yeah, no, no, there's no doubt about that. The percentage of people who give a shit about full albums and the full album experience is so minuscule compared to what you're talking about. It's like probably like 0.0005% of anyone who makes any kind of music purchase, including streaming.
Yeah. And in the late 60s, when it had gone from singles, 45s to albums, then it was, like completely the opposite. Everyone listened to
Mm,
albums, and that's all they listened to. I mean, first of all, there weren't many alternatives, but also it was the whole album experience.
yeah, yeah, that certainly started in that era. You know who was a big factor in that shift was Led Zeppelin, and more specifically Peter Grant, their manager. One of the things he stressed from the get-go with them, and it was his decision, and it's one of the things that he insisted upon if he was going to manage them, was that they were going to be an albums band and not a singles band. And Zeppelin rarely released singles per se, and he was a visionary in that sense, because not everybody was thinking that way, and it was kind of out of left field, because singles, as you know, were selling millions. A big hit single was enough to sustain a band and everybody around them for years. And so that's just kind of an interesting
Yep.
aside. I read that recently about Peter Grant, because you always think about, when you hear that name, you think about, oh God, he was like like a
Tyrant.
thug,
Yeah.
just like an asshole thug who was just this big fat dude who beat the shit out of people at the Oakland Coliseum
Yeah.
because somebody offended his 11-year-old son, and he and Richard, what's his name, their road manager,
Yeah.
almost, well, they put a guy in the hospital,
Yeah.
a guy from Bill Graham's road crew, because he supposedly chastised Peter Grant's son backstage about something, like the kid was doing something wrong, and
Right.
this guy jumped on him, and they took him into another room and, like, beat him to within an inch of his life. But apparently Peter Grant was that wasn't the only facet to his character. I guess that's my point.
Yes.
All right, next up,
Yep.
um, Sweet. Another fine English pop band from the, I don't know if they started in the late 60s. They probably did, but
Yeah.
primarily their heyday was the early to mid 70s.
70s. Yeah. Yeah. Their first single was Little Willie.
I remember hearing that on one of my mom's K-Tel
Yeah.
compilations
Yeah.
from that era, and that song stuck with me. Well, that was the sort of thing that got me into music initially, and those songs stick with you forever
Oh
when
yeah.
you hear them at that age
Yep.
from those K-Tel samplers, which are
Yeah.
great, by the way.
I had
Probably have
those.
20 of them.
Yeah. And then Destination Boulevard was their first hit album. I mean, they had albums before that, but that was their
Yeah,
first
yeah,
hit album.
great
And
record.
I was a big Sweet fan. I would say Sweet are not together because I really like the Sweet, and I think the Sweet, and then it became Sweet
Uh-huh.
because I think I'd have heard something, because again I really liked Sweet. I never got to see them live, but I certainly would have. I really liked them. I really like Fox on the Run. I really like Ballroom Blitz. I like the action. I even like Love Is Like Oxygen.
Oh, that song's great. I was waiting for
Yeah.
you to finish listing them,
No.
and I was going to throw that one in.
Yeah. I like that
But
one.
of course you mentioned it, and that's on one of their later records.
Yeah. Yeah. And like
And
maybe
man,
1980. Yeah.
such a cool song.
Yeah.
All of those are, I mean, for those to be hits and to be that good of songs,
Yeah.
that's just further evidence of how great top 40 music was back then, because
But it's funny because
those
they're
hold up.
dismissed. But it's funny because they're dismissed by in music
Oh,
history.
sure.
Like they were Bubblegum, they were top 40.
Yeah. Yeah, but you listen to him, it's like, no, man, that is a really unique Ballroom Blitz. That's a really unique sounding song that sounds like nothing else and is played by incredible musicians and is just catchy as hell.
I was in grade school and that was a big hit, and I hadn't heard it yet, and everyone was talking about it. And I was like, "What is this song?" And I was listening to the radio constantly, trying to because that's how I was going to hear it. And I kept missing it. Finally, so I came on to like that 6 months after everyone else in my class had been like digging it, and I finally got to hear it. I was like, "This is cool." So
They laid a dollar short. Sorry,
yes,
sorry,
the,
kid.
the story of
Your
my entire
life must have been
childhood.
so tough.
Yes. So
So your
um,
answer was what?
not
I
together.
forget. Eh.
So they're still together.
So after uh, after some activity over the years, occasional reunions and tours with various members, um, in early 2024, one of the original guys, or at least he was one of the guys from their prime time, Andy Scott, who was a
Yeah,
guitarist,
yeah.
he put the band back together and put out an album in 2024 under the name Sweet. So they are technically still doing it.
And how you know the names of the band is because in the beginning of Ballroom Blitz, you ready, Steve?
Yeah, yeah,
Andy?
yeah,
Okay. Nick? All right.
yeah. So yes, I can't imagine you're going to be running out to buy their latest opus,
No, I
but
think I'm pretty much done with Sweet. I'll let my memory, I'll enjoy it because I'll still listen to Fox on the Run or Ballroom Blitz or something like that. So, and that is again one of the beauties of streaming.
sure.
You know what? I haven't heard Fox on the Run in a long time. Go ahead, listen to it.
Hmm.
And I love having that at my fingertip. You know, music access.
Yep.
But uh, and that's the problem with this game in terms of it's one guy, and so there's so many bands like that, and there are bands that are touring. I'm sure, I don't know which one specifically, but I'm sure Chicago or Foreigner or Styx or Journey or one of those or Doobie Brothers has no one from the original band. You
Well,
know,
just stay tuned, Ken. You might find out.
so
You might get that
but
confirmed.
but they're still playing together. Is
Well, you know the criteria.
yeah.
So if it meets the criteria, then that's what we go by. Okay, next one. And I don't know how much these guys were ever on your radar. I know you for sure have heard of them and probably remember seeing some of their records, and maybe your older siblings may have even had a record or two by them. But Savoy Brown,
Yeah. So Savoy Brown, I had one of those collection records or something like that. Not a KTEL, but more like two songs by Savoy Brown, two songs by Powerhouse or something like that. Because I remember there being some record like that. I didn't. I don't know them well. I do remember the name, but I don't know them well. They're the sort of band I would say, yeah, they're still together.
okay, so they're not.
Okay.
And I hesitated whether or not I'd put them on the list, but what the fuck. They so the leader and the mainstay in the band was this guy named Simmons, like OMDS,
Okay.
and he was known as a hotshot blues guitarist, and that's basically what they were known as
Yeah.
for their first whatever decade together was one of the glut of English white blues bands,
Right.
and
That's what I know them as. Yeah.
yeah, and even Robin Trower came out of Savoy Brown, and left them in the early 70s when he started his solo career. But anyway, Kim Simmons died in 2023, I think, or 2022. And a record they had been working on came out shortly after he died. But since then, nothing. So technically, they're done, which makes sense because if they're to carry on without Simmons, that would be pretty sacrilegious.
Is Robin Trower still alive?
As far as I know, although I don't read any media anymore, so he could have died in the last few months without me knowing.
And so then, how did you know about Kim Simmons dying?
Um, well, this happened. It was a few years ago. It's 2023, and when I'm coming up with this list, I do some research,
Okay.
but it's going to like Wikipedia,
Got it. Okay.
that sort of thing. Or
Because I'm curious whether you just know these things because you're like
Some,
you still read music magazines, for example.
yeah, yeah. So some of them I just know just because I know, but a lot of them I have to go double check just to make sure. And in fact, all of them I double check just to make sure because if we're not correct on this stuff, then our viewer might get a little pissed off.
Rolling Stones still together?
Unfortunately. Okay, so
Although I will say, in defense of the Stones, and I certainly don't like the output anymore, but they still have a lot of the original members. Pretty impressive.
well,
Not
two.
original, but I'm like Ron Wood's been with them for so long.
It's almost like he's been with them so long, you almost have to count him as an
Yes,
original.
that's what I'm saying. So
Oh, and speaking of the Stones, so I know we had talked about the movie Sympathy for the Devil uh, not too long ago, and Charlie is my
yeah,
darling.
yeah,
So another reason why I just have to sing the praises of the Criterion Channel. They both recently showed up on the Criterion
very
Channel,
good.
and you
Yeah.
can't find those anywhere. And that's the sort of quality and obscurities that show up on the Criterion Channel. So of course I watched them both recently, and my God, Sympathy for the Devil is such an amazing artifact. Um, for so you've seen it, right? But it's probably been a long time.
So this is where it gets confusing. Okay, so is this the movie that Godard made, where they're
Yes,
recording it? Okay,
yes.
so I know it as 1+1.
That was what it was called
Yeah,
in France and
yeah.
maybe even parts of Europe. But the formal title for the US release is Sympathy for the Devil.
Because
But it is the same movie.
there's a couple other movies called Sympathy for the Devil that are have nothing to do with that, and so it's confusing. But so yes, I've seen it, and again, I've just seen it as 1+1.
Okay. Just a real quick aside, a couple of the takeaways, the primary takeaways I had from it. Again, I mean, it's such a fly on the wall, that's so valuable to generations for hundreds of years because of who the Rolling Stones became, and their legacy is going to go on for probably hundreds of years. Um, but it's Godard, Jean-Luc Godard, filming them while they're creating the song "Sympathy for the
Yep,
Devil" in the studio
yep,
for the Beggars Banquet record. At that point, they don't know that the record's going to be called Beggars Banquet,
yep.
but it's so cool to see it start in its embryonic stage where it just sounds like shit. Like it's just awful. Charlie sounds like he can hardly play drums, and it's just so different than the final product, which is such a brilliant song. But again, the main takeaway for me, and it's just chillingly sad, is seeing Brian Jones in it because I don't know if you recall this, but Brian Jones, Mick and Keith and Bill Wyman and Charlie, they're all out in the middle of the studio.
Yep.
Brian is sequestered off into his own little cube
Yep.
with an acoustic guitar, just jamming away on the acoustic guitar with headphones on. And what the audience is viewing is what the Stones are listening to while they're recording the song. There's no acoustic guitar in it. So Brian wasn't even in the mix, and
They,
he wasn't even aware of it.
yep.
And it's just so sad because he's clearly just on his last legs, and they're that dismissive of him that he's not part of the discussions
Yep.
while they're putting the song together. He's not part of anything. He's just off in his own little world, and he looks like he's really playing, like he's really into it, playing his acoustic guitar. And it's so sad that it's not even in the mix. It's kind of heartbreaking to see how he was treated, and clearly he needed some help. And judging by this anyway, which seemed pretty candid, it's like nobody was in that band was there to help him.
They were like everything else is too important. Like our success is more important than what happens to Brian. And they wanted to sack him, but they were afraid about the negative fan reaction if they did sack him because he was still super popular. But then they're about to go on tour, and he couldn't go on tour because of his drug busts. And so they're able to use that as a obviously you can't come on tour with us, so therefore it'd be best if you left the band. And then
Oh,
he died a month later, 2 weeks
Yeah,
later.
something like that. And uh, I think he was 27 when he died. I
Right
think
around
he's
there.
part of that club, the
Yeah.
27 Club. And man, he had the eyes of about a 48-year-old
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and the looks and demeanor of somebody in their late 40s, if not early 50s,
Yeah.
because he was so messed up. And
Yeah.
and after watching uh, uh, Charlie is My Darling, which was filmed in '65,
Yeah.
and their tour of Ireland,
Yeah.
where he's still this young, spry, good-looking, tow-headed blonde
Yeah.
who's got all this energy, and to see that and then watch Sympathy for the Devil, which was only a few years
I was gonna
later,
say
is
not much later. Yeah.
shocking.
And but I do agree that the interesting thing about the making the song, like starting from scratch, really, that's also interesting. Not in quite the same way, but in Get Back, the Beatles
Uh-huh.
released by Peter Jackson, watching Paul, writing, Get Back, and just sort of like making up verses at first, and then just sort of,
Yeah.
finding
Like,
it.
oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, and so it's amazing, like to watch, artists do that.
That creative process
Yeah,
when you're watching it at the time, you don't know that it's going to be this legendary piece of art that is still revered
yeah.
50 to 60 years later.
And
So
at
that's
first
why
they're
it's so great to have that artifact.
Yeah, because at first they're just throwing in lyrics, anything, and Bruce would do this too. They just throw in lyrics just to get from from bridge to chorus or wherever,
Hmm.
and then over time change it, change it, change it. Because I'm also watching for the second time The Promise about the
Hmm.
making of Darkness.
Right, right. That's really good too.
It's excellent, and man, though it must have been tough working with Bruce because at one point he just keeps saying to Max Weinberg, the drummer, over and over, "Stick, stick, stick," because he keeps hearing the stick hitting the drum and he doesn't want to hear the stick. And like Max just being at it for like 10 hours. Like it would be tough to have worked with Bruce on Born to Run and Darkness. Uh,
Sure.
so
Sure. You know what he's talking about when he says stick. That what the formal term for that,
yeah,
where you hear the actual stick hitting the drum head,
right,
that's called the attack.
okay, yeah,
And some for some things that works really well,
yeah,
but the sound that resonates after the attack, that's what Bruce is. He's wanting to hear the tom,
right.
the song or the sound resolving. So are you getting anything out of that on your second viewing that you didn't get the first viewing?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I'll also, because if I've seen something before, I might watch like I don't feel the need to watch the whole thing from start to finish because I've already seen it. So I might watch 20 or 30 minutes, like jump to something else and then come back to it. As a matter of fact, what I did was I watched about 30 minutes, 45 minutes the other night, and then went to YouTube, watched some live Springsteen stuff from that era, and then went back to it. And that's one of the cool things to do these days that you're able to do. It's just amazing. And I keep as I keep telling you about YouTube and sending you stuff and all, it's just ridiculous like what's on there. You know,
I haven't watched that Echo and the Bunnymen
okay,
clip
yeah,
you just sent, but I will, of
that's a full
course.
concert,
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't wait to watch
it's
that.
just ridiculous.
From
So
'84, right?
yeah, and I
Sure.
and I that came across my screen because I was watching some Lloyd Cole and the Commotions live shows from that era.
Hmm.
I'm a big Lloyd Cole fan, huge Lloyd Cole fan. So
I did not know that.
yeah, so
Switching gears, the next band is Mazzy Star.
yeah, there's not. I'll say not together. This is not my
Not in
not
your
in my wheelhouse.
wheelhouse.
Yeah,
And some of these, of course, are gonna be less in your wheelhouse than others. I figured this one might be. I figured you were probably a big fan of their singer, Hope Sandoval,
yeah.
who
Like I, for whatever reason, they never really came across my radar. And I've heard the occasional song, and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. And they just never hooked me for whatever reason. It's funny, partly, and this is stupid, okay, but it can be the name of a band, and there's some like,
and you don't like the name.
yeah, and I can't tell you why. I just don't. And then there are other bands. I remember Kim and I saw a band years ago called the Damnations. And I was like, oh man, I love that name. Like, and we just went to see them basically. I think just based on the name. And so there's some names that I'm just like Spandau Ballet. I'm like, okay, like doesn't work for me. My Bloody Valentine. Although even the lead singer for My Bloody Valentine said, "Why the hell did we name the band that?" Which I thought
Yeah,
was funny.
after a stupid '70s slasher movie.
Yes. so stupidly, that's why Mazzy Star never really resonated with me. As opposed to like a band, and I don't even know them well, but I love the name Stereo Lab. That is a great name for a band.